This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
I love hard games. Gaming always felt like a test of strength to me, and I welcome any challenge with open arms and doomed controllers. Nowadays, the concept of a hard game is lost on developers, and the consumer is left with a game with a bloated sense of difficulty, like bullet sponges or no difficulty at all. Lately, it feels like developers have lost touch with what made gaming in the 90s truly legendary, the feeling of conquering an insurmountable challenge by skill alone. With this video, I'll be showing 3 examples of games that handle difficulty in the best possible manner, in a vain hope that future developers will take these notes to heart. If my intro footage didn't make it too obvious, my first and favorite example is Devil May Cry 3. A spectacle fighter by nature, Devil May Cry 3's intricate combat engine and variety in gameplay rock the industry. The beauty of this game, though, is that the gameplay is purely based on spatial difficulty, the concept of zoning and reaction in a battle scenario. DMC3's use of spatial difficulty is so pure that some of them multiple challenge runs in various tournaments in order to show off their mastery of the combat engine, proving that a wide array of stunning and exploitative things can be done in the game if you're good enough to master it. In terms of game design, the game doesn't deprive you of anything either. You have all the tools you'll ever need from the start, while extra weapons and skills are unlocked permanently as you push through the plot. This sense of progression and growth are met with tests of skill through mandatory boss fights and optional challenge missions, and these challenges are incentivized by rewards as well. In terms of difficulty scaling, Devil May Cry 3 makes a legit hard mode by increasing the attack speed and AI of the enemies, which means new attack patterns and brand new attacks depending on the enemy. It evokes the concept of pure difficulty, since everything in the game revolves around you as the player rather than AI exploitation or team manipulation. It's a very refreshing feeling, to say the least. My next example is a relatively unknown video game. Those who know about it generally have angry things to say about it. The La-Mulana remake is a Metroidvania that handles difficulty in a very interesting aspect. The game has some spatial aspects of difficulty like Devil May Cry 3, but is primarily designed around the idea of academic difficulty. The idea that difficulty is rooted in examining the game itself and finding the tricks necessary in order to progress the game. La-Mulana takes this concept and works it into the game's design through its mix of very cryptic clues, deviously hidden power-ups, and tricks in order to purchase overpowered weapons early in the game. As such, the crew of La-Mulana's player growth and progress are all dependent on critical thinking and execution. That's not to say that the game doesn't have legit difficulty, however. Bosses and mid-bosses all require very tight maneuvering and often dirty tricks in order to make them bearable. The beauty behind La-Mulana, though, is how it melds academic and spatial difficulty. For people that take the time to dissect this game's mechanics, they're rewarded with the capacity to trivialize some bosses and cheese certain areas. There's only one hard mode in this game, but it's handled in an adequate manner. The game adds different mobs to certain areas, and boss attack speed is increased. Unfortunately, boss HP is ridiculously padded, and contact damage gets buffed as well. Though La-Mulana's difficulty is hard to access initially, it rewards players who take the time to find all the tricks in the game. It's a great game for people who like to exploit tricks or maybe dissect games for a living. My final example is a game that was introduced to me quite recently, and I'm still kicking myself for not knowing about it sooner. Yes, La-Mulana is an action-adventure game that uses the idea of spatial difficulty along with the concept of reactive difficulty, the idea of exploiting the environment or enemy weaknesses on the fly in order to defeat a challenge. The difficulty in La-Mulana is mostly technical, but there is some preparation needed in order to progress the plot. While some preparation is mandatory, the game still does keep to a high standard of spatial difficulty with its need of battlefield awareness and pattern recognition in order to defeat bosses. The bosses in Oath and Felghana are usually a case of find the weakness, but this is nowhere near a win strategy in every fight, and you still need a sharp wit in order to survive. The game also takes challenges a step further by offering time attacks, boss rushes, custom challenges through achievements, and various levels of difficulties. Harder difficulties throughout the game are a mixed bag. Enemy HP and overall speed are ramped up, but there are also very noticeable AI changes and different bullet patterns at times. While a relatively short game, Oath and Felghana's mix of reactive circumstances and spatial awareness really make it shine as a truly tough game. So, what do all these seemingly arbitrary games have in common? If you've been taking notes, you'll note that all of them exploit spatial difficulty to effective degrees. Bosses are often a daunting test of a player's ability, requiring a mastery of pattern recognition, knowing when to attack, and how to exploit the most amount of damage. This in turn leads to a high focus on sharpening your skill and technique through dungeon design or straight combat, oftentimes forcing a player to get better or rage quit trying. Finally, since each game's engine is focused on player skill, you are hampered by gear score or experience points, allowing the ability to win with what you are handed initially. Everything in these games is centered around making the player better, not the player avatar. You feel the difficulty through recognizable but tough to execute evasive patterns, or learning an attack string that utterly devastates a boss. By beating these challenges, you as a player feel a sense of mastery over the game since it pushed you to do so, and by pushing back, the game recognizes your change in skill by allowing you to progress and usually giving you some kind of intrinsic reward. And that feeling alone is what separates a good game from a great game. That feeling of accomplishment for all the effort you put into the game. While there are other games that handle difficulty in interesting and unique ways, these games are the ones I often find myself replaying because of their exceptional handling of skill-based difficulty. I never feel hampered by RNG bullshit or bored over a bloated enemy HP, and these games help me feel empowered due to actual human capacity. If you want pure tests of gaming skill, I'd highly recommend checking these games out. Just be sure to have a steady supply of controllers though.